Blackpool holds a special place for tram enthusiasts worldwide. During the past 13 years, two notable centenaries have been celebrated, beginning in 1985 with the 100 years of continuous operation along part of the promenade line. The celebrations really began in June, when 706, laid up since July 1980, was wheeled out in its new open-top condition to receive a royal seal of approval. Princess Alice arrived at Stargate on June the 6th. Here she boarded balcony 40, making this the first royal tram ride in Blackpool since 1937. HRH was accompanied by the chairman of the Transport Committee, Councillor Stanley Parkinson, who had been planning the centenary for 16 years. At North Pier, the Princess performed the unveiling ceremony, the car displaying suitable congratulations from its sponsor, the Fylde Tramway Society. The ceremony concluded, the Princess was transported in the direction of the Tower on Centenary Car 641. Capturing the spirit of the occasion, this splendid floral tram was sighted outside St John's Church, and several shops carried tram displays. Balcony 40, the official emblem of the centenary, was featured in an illuminated tableau. As an official guide stated, everything was tremendous. On the 16th of June, an open day was held at the depot, the first in the undertaking's history. A special service carried visitors to and from North Pier. The cars travelling via Manchester Square and Lytham Road. Excitement was intense when restored former conduit car number 4 of 1885 made its first trip down to the promenade on Saturday the 13th of July 1985. Painted in the original livery and powered by batteries to simulate conduit operation, number 4 had been handed over to Stanley Parkinson by its owners, the National Tramway Museum. It was over 20 years since the little tram had last operated in Blackpool on a bitterly cold day in January 1963, an event fully covered in our companion tape, Blackpool Trams Part 2. During the centenary, the priceless veteran mainly reposed on a special siding laid at North Pier. But it was not all looking back. Designed to replace the Omos, the first of which had been scrapped in late March, Blackpool had been taking delivery of its new centenary class. On the 13th of July, the testbed car 651, on loan from GEC for 2 years, made its first public outing on an enthusiast tour. The car was fitted with Maley and Taunton bogies with experimental switch reluctance motors. This was the Sunday on which the collection of historic cars assembled for the centenary headed north to participate in the first ever Fleetwood Tram Sunday. Taking part was the reconstructed Bolton car of 1901. The crews were appropriately attired in period costume. Balcony 40, magnificently restored by the TMS, was sponsored by Norweb. The GPO sponsored the exquisite Manchester California car of 1914, which normally operated at Heaton Park. This had been exchanged by its owners, the Manchester Tramway Museum Society, for boat number 600. The 1928 pantograph car was owned by the TMS and sponsored by ICI, whose over-elaborate adverts seem somewhat out of keeping. Sheffield 513 of 1950, on loan from the North East Museum of Transport, had been sponsored by Bass Breweries. The Dreadnought, on loan from the TMS, had been running in Blackpool since May 1976. The Edinburgh four-wheeler dated from 1948. Owned by Lothian Region Transport, 35 was sponsored by National Savings. A mixed bag of vintage buses, cars and commercial vehicles were also set to join the trams. The other Scottish participant, also dating from 1948, was the TMS-owned Glasgow Cunarder, sponsored by Sea-Link. It proved to be a magnificent occasion, with Lord Street closed to all traffic but the trams. A flat fare of 20p was charged.
press forward any of you.
Smooth riding was very much the order of the day, as all the Fleetwood track had been relaid during the winters of 1982 to 84, giving an estimated life of some 30 years. During the festival, the regular service cars reversed at Ash Street. After a hugely enjoyable day, the colourful ensemble travelled back to the depot, each crammed to capacity with enthusiasts from all over the world. Dotted the length of the tram road were scores of photographers, listening to the singing wire and recording this glorious convoy. During their stay, most of the visiting trams were gainfully employed on both normal and special duties. Built in 1924 to an antiquated design, number 40 only predated the streamline balloons by some 9 years. Restored by the National Tramway Museum, 40 was their main contribution to the centenary. It represented Blackpool's 55 legendary standard cars. 40 had been withdrawn in October 1962, although the last of the standards had carried on until the end of the 1966 season. During the course of this colourful year, all the major film companies must have processed thousands of tram images. Sponsored by Blackpool Sandcastle, the final foreign tram to arrive was the Irish veteran Hill of Howth No. 10. Dating from 1902 and owned by the TMS, it had been restored by the MSC workshop in Bolton, arriving just in time for the switch-on of the illuminations on the 30th of August. Like actress Joanna Lumley, it looked absolutely fabulous. Also in attendance were the Blackpool General Manager Derek Hyde on the left and his brother Geoffrey on the right, who by a stroke of fortune was then president of the TMS. The open topper would stay at the resort until November 1989. The Hill of Howth gauge having been 5 foot 3 inches, the car had subsequently been re-gauged. .1297 had also been re-gauged from 4 foot 7 3/4 to the standard 4 foot 8 1/2. The 3 visiting post-war double-deckers had enjoyed relatively little service in their home towns. 513 just 10 years in Sheffield. .1297, 14 in Glasgow. And 35 only 8 years in Edinburgh. From this angle, the four-wheeler could almost have been back on Leith Walk or the waterfront near Granton. In its native habitat, the Glasgow car had carried a bow collector and not a trolley pole. Each evening, after residing on its special siding, number 4 would trundle slowly back to the depot. During the 1985 season, the historic collection was often used as extras, but rarely ventured south beyond the pleasure beach. 753, the versatile works car with its diesel generator, would suffer an explosion and fire in its fuel system in June 1990. In readiness for the centenary, the last of the 25 post-war coronations, 660, had been restored to near original appearance. But it was the Dreadnought which, perhaps more than any other car, captured something of the unique flavour of the century-old promenade line. During 1985, the Pleasure Beach Loop certainly gave pleasure to thousands of visiting enthusiasts as they revelled in the wonderful mix of the old and new. At the end of the season, some of the visitors made a rapid exit, whilst others stayed for several more years. 35, for example, did not leave until 1987. Each evening, the illuminated fleet added their own spectacular dash of character and colour. All four cars now had sponsors. For example, the Western train had become a fisherman's friend. Blackpool's illuminations remain one of the greatest shows in the world, enlivened by the constant procession of trams packed with excited visitors admiring the miles and miles of lights. Despite requiring a 3-man crew, the giant 94-seater balloons are probably the highest-earning public service vehicles in the country. Some of the historic fleet were not specially cosseted. Out they would come in rain, wind and drizzle, often providing vivid memories of their own home cities. Here Sheffield 513 could have been back in the 1950s on the Prince of Wales Road reservation as it bounced past umbrellas on its rocky trip towards the Tower. Or again, might this just be the rain-soaked moor in central Sheffield? The actual 100th anniversary of the Promenade Tramway will live on in the minds of the estimated 1 million people believed to have been in Blackpool on the 29th of September 1985. Gradually, the 20 participating trams, complete with their complement of pre-booked passengers, were dispatched from the depot to make their way to the various turning points, so that the grand cavalcade could then set off from North Pier in the assigned order. Adding that extra little touch of magic was this TMS-owned steam tram engine, which appropriately was also celebrating its own centenary. feverish behind-the-scenes activity had ensured John Bull would go whistling happily towards North Pier. Here the loco clattered through the point work at Manchester Square. Unlike so many other Lancashire towns, steam trams had never actually operated in Blackpool. As part of the recreation of the 1885 opening ceremony, a procession of landaus brought various civic dignitaries in period costume to North Pier. Included along with several mayors was the grandson of Holroyd Smith, the inventor of the original conduit system. Following the unveiling of a plaque, the 20-car procession moved off at 11:45, the Mayor of Blackpool using the original handle to start number 4. A regular service was maintained throughout. The cavalcade, bands playing, bells clanging and whistles chiming, moved slowly along the Golden Mile, watched by thousands of visitors, residents and enthusiasts. Under the watchful eye of the tower, the stately procession progressed towards Pleasure Beach. On arrival, this extraordinary galaxy of stars fully occupied the two-way loop. A whole century of trams in one location. Only John Bull reversed at Harrowside. Gradually the cars returned north. After all its exertions, John Bull steamed back to Rigby Road. What a triumph it had been for all those involved in galvanising the 100-year-old loco into action. The official guests were now taken for a celebratory lunch. Later on, in a little-used length of track in Princess Street, a tug-of-war was held. After much sweat and toil, the worthy winners were the transport drivers. A scantily clad Miss Blackpool 1985 did little to lower the temperature. For the rest of the day, the majority of the vintage trams operated in public service, some venturing out to Fleetwood. On most, it was standing room only. Like all good things, the end finally came on October the 27th, when the Transport Department organised not the last night of the proms, but the last night on the prom. A buffet was served on 660, there was community singing and a firework display. Councillor Parkinson's vision of a great public celebration had been fully realised. A century on, the trams were still very much part of the Blackpool scene, although, as ever, change was in the wind. Next came the poignant farewells. On the 30th of November, number 4 was brought out for the last time. Again, those taking part wore period costume. With a true sense of history, the car revisited the site of the original conduit track giving access from the promenade to Blundell Street Depot, opened in 1885. Having posed outside the Foxhall on Princes Street, the little car purred onto the almost deserted prom. Its long survival at Copse Road was little short of miraculous, as was its participation in the 1960 celebrations. For those who believe in Santa Claus, is it too much to hope it will be back in 2010? The centenary was the tramway's municipal swan song, for in October 1986 the trams and buses were transferred to new owners, Blackpool Transport Services Limited, although the corporation retained responsibility for track, overhead and substations. A new logo swiftly displaced the former corporation coat of arms. Innovation included addition of this replica toast rack built by Bolton Trams Limited. Similar to the Vanguard class operated by the former Tramroad Company, 619, which entered service in September 1987, was built on the frame of OMO number 7. Two of the town's popular boats have emigrated to the United States. One of these, having operated in Philadelphia in the 1970s, languished in Blackpool for several years before sailing for San Francisco in 1985. Now it forms a much-loved part of the municipal railway's growing collection of antique trolleys. Carrying its original number, 228, it first entered service there in 1986. Currently, some 22 former Blackpool trams are in various museums worldwide. One of the finest restorations was undertaken at Beamish, where former works car 754 was transformed into its original 1901 condition as open-top Martin boxcar number 31, entering service there in June 1988. Blackpool cars have also featured in several of the country's garden festivals. This was Gateshead in 1990. The highlight of the 1990 Fleetwood Tram Sunday was the appearance in different liveries of three of the boats. 605 carried the once familiar green V, 602 was in yellow and black, and 604 in red and white. Boxcar 40 had been on loan from the Tramway Museum since 1988.
Don't know the hell it was like.
Of the modern fleet, by early 1990, the GEC testbed car had been retrucked, re-equipped and renumbered 648. After 15 years on its old stamping ground, the Dreadnought was returning to the Derbyshire Hills. A farewell tour was held on November the 11th. Reflecting another new trend, in early 1991, 701 appeared in this heritage livery. The Fleetwood boxcar followed the Dreadnought back to Crouch in November 1991. By 1992, only two OMOs were in regular use, final operation occurring the following March. Never wholly satisfactory, these high-capacity one-man cars had, however, helped to save the tramway. For the discerning, the pre-war cars still had many differences. For example, 636 retained half-drop windows and roof lights. .680 had re-entered service in 1992 with two-piece folding doors. Throughout the 80s and 90s, work continued on rebuilding, refurbishing and upgrading the fleet, whilst also retaining their traditional appearance. Far East Exotica came to the English West Coast in the shape of two Hong Kong-built cars. Destined for Birkenhead, birthplace of the British tram, they were to be operated by Blackpool on behalf of Wirral Borough Council. After numerous teething problems, complete with two conductors, the 48-seaters carried their first passengers in July 1993. They also featured in Fleetwood Tram Sunday and ran on a truncated tour of the illuminations, avoiding the loops at Stargate and Little Bispam, where their long wheelbase trucks proved unsuitable. The pair now reside on the Wirral, running on a short line linking Woodside Ferry to Edgerton Dock. The staff are on the payroll of Blackpool Transport Services. 69 and 70 first ran in public service in Birkenhead on the 14th of April 1995. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of VE Day, 703 was repainted in the former wartime livery. Later a trolley pole was substituted for further authenticity. The man responsible for many of the recent imaginative innovations is Anthony Depledge, current Managing Director of Blackpool Transport Services.
Of course, the Blackpool and Fleetwood Tramway is a very important part of the whole public transport network here on the Fylde coast. Operating between Blackpool and Fleetwood, it actually fills in an important part of our network of bus and tram services, and in fact will have an increasingly important role to play as there's growing awareness in the whole of society about traffic congestion worries, about environmental worries, and those sorts of concerns are going to lead to an improved and more important role for public transport, buses and trams, and I believe our tramway will continue always an important part of that public transport system. It's quite right to say that the trams are very old. They are over 60 years old, and that means that they were built, they were built very robustly, very solid vehicles, but they were built to a style which perhaps doesn't entirely fit with everything we might want to do today. But the trams are part of a living system, and that living system has to adapt and grow and change. And so we have to keep the skills in our workshops and the abilities we have to work with woodworking, with blacksmiths, and all the skills that you would require to look after those vehicles.
To maintain the system, there are several works cars. This combination consists of 2X rail coaches, 259 and Long John Rail Crane 260. This is Real Trailer 750. Grinder 752 is the last four-wheeler on the Blackpool books. This highly flexible vehicle entered service during 1994. It is a real patchwork. The tank-like body was built by East Lancashire coach builders, the bogies are off a rail coach, and the motors come from a boat.
Go down to Hopton Road and back, wouldn't it?
754 also has a diesel generator. Anthony Depledge again.
The tramway is a living creature. It evolves, it changes over a period of time. But one of the things I think we have to do as stewards of this tramway, that is to say we're looking after it before we hand it on to other people later on, some of the things we have to do are to keep the essential characteristics of the fleet. Because even though the tramway isn't a tourist attraction in itself, it is part of the whole experience of Blackpool. And I wouldn't want to change it completely. So I'm not sure that brand new vehicles will be on our current agenda. Of course, at some stage we will have to replace them. But for as long as we can, we would like to retain the character that we have now, adapt it, change it, let it grow.
Helping to retain the line's essential character, Since 1995, the bulk of the electrical infrastructure has been virtually rebuilt in association with the upgrading of the electrical side of the illuminations. But the new substations, poles and overhead have a strong traditional flavour. Costing some £9 million, the result is an attractive layout giving improved performance with minimal maintenance costs. For the aficionados, the fleet has many little differences to look out for. For example, with ongoing refurbishment of the 1937 brush cars, by 1996 only 3 still retained half-drop windows. 680, one of the oldest vehicles in the fleet, has been given the truck off OMO number 1 some years back. 623 has no roof lights and redesigned saloon windows. In this twin set, the 1960-built trailer retains the glass louvres above the windows. Sadly under threat is the much-loved but ageing Western train. Built in 1962 using Rail Coach 209 for the locomotive and Pantograph 174 for the trailer, the set had been deemed life expired. A farewell tour was even held in February 1996, but as of 1998, the train is still chugging along. Boxcar 40 had returned to Blackpool in time for the 1996 Fleetwood Tram Sunday, but the real star was the reconstructed Stockport car of 1901. After the journey out to Fleetwood, the open topper was heating up and was returned post-haste to Rigby Road. Recently, some model trams have appeared in the Corgi Classic range, including different representations of the balloon cars. secrecy had surrounded the arrival of the prototype road liner in Blackpool on July the 23rd, 1997. Almost a year later, on the 1st of June 1998, these scenes show the British-built tram on the prom under the watchful eye of the Railway Inspectorate. This car is of the highest possible significance. Built by Pullman TPL in Cardiff, it represents a genuine attempt to produce an affordable light rail vehicle incorporating all the latest technology. Weighing in at 22 tons, the 200-capacity tram has been assembled, commissioned and tested at Rigby Road. It is 30 metres long and 2.4 metres wide and has a life expectancy of 30 years. Of particular interest was its performance on the various sharp curves on the Blackpool system. The next day, June the 2nd, road liner 611 left Rigby Road at 5:45 a.m. for a trial run to Fleetwood. For all those who believe in the practical and environmental benefits of light rail, it is to be hoped that this British-built tram will prove successful, and then, most importantly, find enthusiastic buyers. .611 has now been passed to carry fare-paying passengers. Nearly 100 years separates this modern road liner from the veteran Blackpool and Fleetwood cars which inaugurated the interurban linking the two towns on the 1st of July 1898. To celebrate this landmark, a series of special events was organised by Blackpool Transport Services, starting with an open day at Rigby Road on June the 28th. As part of the open day, a tour was also operated from Hopton Road, with selected cars running from the depot via the promenade to the tower. Here they reversed in order to travel along the historic single-line connection via Vauxhall, Princes Street and Blundell Street. As both the track and overhead are rarely used, there were several dewirements. passing the site of the former Blundell Street depot, demolished after storm damage in 1982. Even one of the twin sets made the trip, with a clear demonstration of curb crawling. The first ever trip to Fleetwood in July 1898 was recreated exactly 100 years to the day when the former Blackpool and Fleetwood Company crossbench car number 2 set off from North Pier at 11 a.m. on Wednesday the 1st of July. However, because the tracks to North Station, the original terminus of the tram road, had been closed since 1963, the invited guests, including local civic dignitaries, had boarded at North Pier. Also participating was Boxcar 40. Beyond the Gin, number 2, which had been specially brought from the National Tramway Museum for the celebrations, was very much on familiar territory. This marked the first time the two old company cars had been operated together on the tram road for over 35 years. At Thornton Gate, the running order was reversed for the final leg into Fleetwood. At various points along the route, the two veterans were cheered on their way by local school children. They were also given a boisterous welcome at Ash Street, exactly as in 1898. During the next 10 days, the various vintage trams starred as heritage specials for both the TMS and the Fylde Tramway Society. 167 had arrived in Blackpool at the same time as rack number 2. Everyone was now keenly anticipating the highlight of the celebrations, a centenary cavalcade of trams from Pleasure Beach to Fleetwood to be run on Sunday the 12th of July. Pre-booked tickets, including unlimited travel for the rest of the day, have been advertised at £9.50 per person. Sadly, the weather proved decidedly unfriendly, failing to match the glories of 1985. Undeterred, dignitaries, 600 members of the public, and a goodly number of enthusiasts braved the elements and boarded the assembled cars at Pleasure Beach. Shortly after 11 a.m, the cavalcade, made up of 12 trams and a twin set off for Fleetwood. Here at the Gin, the procession joined the old independent tram road, taken over and absorbed by Blackpool Corporation in 1920. Most of the vehicles involved would, at different times, have been regular performers on the tram road. Rack number 2 had been extensively restored at Cryche. The addition of the company lettering on the dash and the provision of oil lamps for night work all helped to recreate its original 1898 appearance. It had arrived in Blackpool from Cryche on the 22nd of June. The visual aspect of the replica Vanguard had been considerably enhanced by addition of more authentic wrought iron side railings. The 1928 pantograph car had been the second tram to arrive on loan from Cryche on the 22nd of June. Whilst Martin Boxcar 31 had come from the Beamish Museum in September 1997. With the invited guests enjoying a celebratory lunch, most of the veteran cars scurried back to the depot. Three days after the wet and windy cavalcade, various works vehicles were in action in and around Rigby Road. Stockport 5, which owing to various difficulties has yet to play a significant role in Blackpool, was being repositioned.
$7.60.
752 was attached to the tower trailer 749. Real trailer 750 is somewhat dwarfed by 754. .619 also operated several shuttle trips past the site of Blundell Street Depot. During the past 13 years, enthusiasts have revelled in two memorable centenary celebrations. However, as Anthony de Pledge points out, he is managing director of a working tramway, which forms an integral part of the Fylde transport system. As the millennium approaches, it would seem that Britain's oldest tramway is impregnable in its coastal fortress. But what of the future? Will the elderly fleet, like 709 seen here, continue to be rebuilt and upgraded? Can the old cars go on forever? What shape would any new cars take? Will there be more riches to enjoy in 2010, the 125th anniversary of the Promenade Line? The Blackpool Tramway is always worth a visit. There is always something new, something eye-catching. This is 707 seen on the 12th of July, the latest redesigned rebuild. Although well over 60 years old, this particular balloon looks well on its way to clocking up its own centenary. What will replace the centenary class, which are now undergoing their first major midlife overhaul? Long may the town's weird and wonderful collection of trams, with their exotic adverts, continue to give pleasure to the many thousands who regard them as an irreplaceable part of Blackpool's many unique attractions. The original, century-old tram road has clearly set an example to encourage the recreation of modern light rail lines in Manchester, Sheffield, Birmingham, and hopefully many other places in the United Kingdom. As the millennium approaches, the wheel is indeed turning full circle.
Well, that was a bit long and drawn out.